r/malicious compliance stepson called my disabled brother a burden, so I made him caretaker. He's nothing but a burden. Why don't you just put him somewhere already? The words hit me like a physical blow. I froze in the kitchen doorway, my hand still gripping the grocery bags that suddenly felt impossibly heavy. My stepson Tyler stood in the living room, his face twisted with teenage disgust as he gestured toward my brother Danny, who was sitting in his wheelchair by the window, carefully working on a puzzle. Tyler, that's enough. My husband Mark's voice was tired, lacking the firmness this moment demanded. He didn't even look up from his laptop. But Tyler wasn't done. I'm serious, Sarah. I can't even have friends over without them staring at him drooling everywhere. It's gross. And don't get me started on how long he takes in the bathroom. Some of us have lives, you know. The grocery bag slipped from my numb fingers, cans rolling across the hardwood floor. Danny's head turned toward the commotion, his gentle brown eyes, so much like our mother's, finding mine with confusion. At 24, my little brother had the emotional intelligence of someone much older, despite his cerebral palsy. He understood exactly what was being said about him. What did you just say? My voice came out deadly quiet. Tyler rolled his eyes, that practiced 16-year-old smirk spreading across his face. Oh, come on. Everyone's thinking it. He can't even feed himself properly. Mom never had to deal with this kind of thing when she was alive. The mention of Tyler's deceased mother, as if she would have somehow agreed with his cruelty, sent white-hot rage shooting through my veins. I'd been in Tyler's life for 3 years, since he was 13, always trying to be respectful of his loss while building our blended family. I'd made excuses for his attitude, attributed his occasional coldness to grief and teenage hormones. This wasn't grief. This was pure, calculated cruelty. Mark. I turned to my husband, waiting for him to handle his son. Waiting for him to defend the man I'd been protecting since the day he was born, when doctors told our parents he might not survive his first year. Mark finally looked up, his expression uncomfortable. Tyler, apologize to your stepmother. That wasn't appropriate. Wasn't appropriate? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mark, your son just called my brother a burden and suggested we institutionalize him. And you think the problem is that it wasn't appropriate? Tyler crossed his arms. I'm not apologizing for telling the truth. Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with taking care of someone who can't even. Stop. The word exploded out of me. Don't you dare finish that sentence. Danny made a small sound, not quite a word, but I'd learned to read his communications over 24 years. He was trying to defuse the situation, probably blaming himself. My heart shattered a little more. I'd spent my entire adult life making sure Danny felt loved, valued, and protected after our parents died in a car accident 6 years ago. I'd turned down job offers that would have taken me away from him. I'd ended relationships with men who saw him as an inconvenience. I'd found Mark specifically because he'd seemed to understand and accept that Danny and I were a package deal. Apparently, acceptance hadn't trickled down to his son. Tyler's just frustrated, Mark said carefully. Maybe we could discuss some boundaries. Boundaries. I tasted the word like poison. Your son thinks my brother should be hidden away somewhere, and you want to discuss boundaries. Tyler shrugged. At least someone's finally being realistic about the situation. That's when I knew exactly what needed to happen. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and saw something that made my stomach drop. Mark wasn't angry. He was embarrassed. Not by his son's cruelty, but by the scene itself. By me raising my voice. By the awkwardness of it all. You know what, Tyler? I said, my voice taking on a sweetness that made Danny's eyebrows furrow with concern. He knew that tone. You're absolutely right. This situation isn't fair. Tyler's smirk widened, thinking he'd won. It's not fair that you have to live in a house with someone who requires extra care without understanding what that actually means. I moved closer to where he stood, and something in my expression made him take a half step back. It's not fair that you get to enjoy all the benefits of a family that loves unconditionally without contributing to that love yourself. Sarah, Mark warned, finally sensing the shift in atmosphere. I ignored him. So here's what we're going to do. Since you're so concerned about the burden Danny represents, and since you clearly think managing his care is such an inconvenience, you're going to take over his care for the month he's staying with us. Tyler's face went blank. What? You heard me. You want to have an opinion about how we handle Danny's needs? Great. You get to handle them yourself. I started counting on my fingers. You'll help him with his morning routine, that includes helping him shower, get dressed, and eat breakfast. You'll manage his physical therapy exercises. You'll assist him with bathroom breaks throughout the day. You'll help him with meals, making sure he doesn't choke, cleaning up any spills without commentary. The color was draining from Tyler's face. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm dead serious. You'll also be responsible for his evening routine, including helping him get ready for bed. And since you're so worried about your social life, you'll need to factor his needs into any plans you make. No leaving him alone for extended periods. No pawning him off on me or your father. Mark stood up abruptly. Sarah, this is ridiculous. You can't just. I can't what? I whirled on him. I can't expect your son to show basic human decency? I can't expect him to understand what it means to care for someone who depends on you. I can't expect you to back me up when he attacks my family. Danny made another soft sound, and I saw him trying to wheel his chair closer. My heart clenched. Even in the middle of being attacked, he was trying to comfort me. It's okay, Danny, I said gently. Tyler's just going to learn what it really means to help family. Tyler found his voice. This is insane. Dad, tell her she can't make me do this. But Mark was looking between Tyler and me with a trapped expression. He knew he'd handled this badly. He knew his son had crossed a line. And he knew that choosing Tyler's side now might cost him our marriage. Maybe. Mark started slowly, maybe this could be a learning experience. Tyler's mouth fell open. Are you kidding me right now? You did say some pretty harsh things, son. So you're both going to gang up on me? This is so messed up. Tyler's voice was rising. I shouldn't have to take care of someone else's problems. The words hung in the air like a slap. Someone else's problems. That's what my brother was to him. Perfect, I said calmly. Then you'll have a month to adjust your perspective. Starting tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Tyler looked at his father desperately. Dad? Mark's silence spoke volumes. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Mark pretended to sleep beside me. The tension radiating from his rigid posture told me he was just as awake as I was, probably crafting arguments for why my punishment was too extreme. I didn't care. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Danny's face when Tyler called him a burden. The way his shoulders had slumped, how he tried to make himself smaller in his wheelchair. 24 years of building up his confidence, of making sure he knew his worth, and Tyler had tried to tear it down in 30 seconds. Sarah. Mark's voice was quiet in the darkness. We need to talk about this. No, we don't. You can't seriously expect Tyler to handle Danny's full care routine. He's 16. He doesn't know how to. Then he'll learn. I turned to face my husband, making out his silhouette in the dim light filtering through our curtains. The same way I learned when I was 26 and our parents died. The same way Danny had to learn to navigate a world that sees him as inconvenient. Mark sighed heavily. That's different. You're his sister. You chose to take guardianship. And Tyler chose to live in this house. He chose to be part of this family. That comes with responsibilities. He's still processing his mother's death, Sarah. Sometimes he lashes out. Don't. I sat up abruptly. Don't you dare use Linda's death as an excuse for his cruelty. She would be ashamed of what he said today. Mark went quiet, and I knew I'd hit a nerve. He'd told me stories about his late wife, how she volunteered with special needs children, how she'd taught Tyler to be kind to kids who were different. Whatever Linda had tried to instill in her son had clearly been overridden by 3 years of teenage resentment. What if he hurts Danny accidentally? Mark tried a different approach. What if he drops him during a transfer, or? Then you'll supervise until he gets it right. This isn't negotiable, Mark. The next morning, I was up before dawn, preparing. I printed out detailed instructions for Danny's care routine, complete with safety protocols and emergency contacts. I'd also moved my brother's belongings into the guest room on the main floor, closer to Tyler's room, so the commute wouldn't be an excuse for delays. At 6:45 a.m., I knocked on Tyler's door. Go away, came the muffled response. Tyler. You have 15 minutes to get dressed and meet me in Danny's room. I'm not doing this. I opened the door. Tyler was buried under his comforter, only the top of his messy brown hair visible. You are. Unless you prefer to spend your summer volunteering at the assisted living facility downtown instead. I'm sure they could use an extra pair of hands. That got him moving. 20 minutes later, Tyler stood in Danny's doorway looking like he was about to face a firing squad. He was dressed in yesterday's clothes, his hair sticking up at odd angles, radiating resentment from every pore. Danny was already awake, sitting on the edge of his bed in his pajamas. He gave Tyler a tentative smile that wasn't returned. Good morning, I said brightly, holding out the instruction packet. Tyler, meet your new routine. He snatched the papers from my hands, his eyes widening as he flipped through the pages. This is like 20 pages long. 18, actually. Today we'll start with the basics. First step is helping Danny get to the bathroom and then into the shower. Tyler's face went pale. The shower? Did you think his hygiene was optional? But, I mean, can't he do that himself? Danny made a soft sound that might have been amusement. Despite everything, my brother seemed almost curious about how this would play out. Tyler, I said patiently, if Danny could do everything himself, why would you have called him a burden yesterday? The logic trap closed around him, and I watched him realize there was no escape route that didn't involve admitting he'd been wrong. For the next hour, I watched Tyler fumble through what should have been a simple morning routine. His first attempt at helping Danny transfer from bed to wheelchair was so clumsy that Danny had to coach him through it, speaking slowly and clearly to guide Tyler's shaking hands to the right positions. Not so tight, Danny managed, wincing as Tyler gripped his arm like he was afraid my brother might shatter. I'm not made of glass. Tyler's face was bright red with embarrassment and something else, maybe the first glimmer of realization that Danny was fully aware of his incompetence. That the person he dismissed as a burden was now patiently teaching him basic care techniques. The bathroom transfer went worse. Tyler tried to rush it, nearly dropping Danny before catching himself. The terror that flashed across my stepson's face when he realized he'd almost hurt someone was oddly satisfying. Stop, I said firmly. Start over. And this time, listen when Danny tells you how he needs to be moved. This is impossible, Tyler muttered, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air. How do you make it look so easy? Practice, I said simply. 6 years of practice. And actually caring about not causing pain. By the time we got to the shower, Tyler was visibly panicking. He stood outside the bathroom door like it was the entrance to hell. I can't. I don't know how to. He gestured helplessly. Figure it out, I said, settling into a chair I positioned in the hallway. Danny will tell you what he needs. Try listening for once. What followed was the most awkward 30 minutes I'd ever witnessed. Tyler's obvious discomfort with the intimacy required for personal care was painful to watch, but I forced myself to stay in my chair. This was exactly what he needed to understand, that caring for someone vulnerable required you to put their dignity above your own squeamishness. Danny, bless him, was patient in a way that Tyler absolutely didn't deserve. He gave clear, simple instructions, never showing frustration when Tyler fumbled with the shower controls or struggled to position the shower chair correctly. Water's too hot, Danny said gently when Tyler's first attempt at temperature adjustment nearly scalded him. Sorry, Tyler muttered, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. How do you tell when it's right? Test it, on your wrist first. Like a baby bottle. I watched Tyler's face as he processed this, the realization that there were techniques to learn, skills to develop. That what he dismissed as simple caretaking was actually complex and demanding. But the real test came during breakfast. Danny's cerebral palsy affected his fine motor control, making eating a slow, careful process. I'd learned years ago to cut his food into manageable pieces, to position his plate at the right angle, to have a towel ready for spills without making him feel self-conscious about it. Tyler had no such finesse. He plopped a plate of scrambled eggs in front of Danny without cutting them, forgot to move the orange juice within reach, and then sat there staring like he was watching a medical procedure instead of a meal. When Danny struggled to get a forkful of eggs to his mouth and a small piece fell onto his shirt, Tyler made a disgusted face. Ew, that's... Finish that sentence and you'll be eating through a straw for a week, I warned quietly. Danny had gone very still, his fork halfway to his mouth. The shame in his posture made my chest tight with rage. Tyler, I said, my voice dangerously soft, clean that up. Now. And next time, you'll remember to cut his food properly so it doesn't happen. But I don't know how. Then you'd better learn fast, hadn't you? As Tyler fumbled with a napkin, dabbing awkwardly at Danny's shirt while my brother sat frozen with embarrassment, I realized this was going to be much harder than I'd anticipated. Not because Tyler couldn't learn the physical tasks, though that was proving challenging enough. But because watching him hurt Danny's feelings repeatedly was testing my own resolve. The real breakthrough, if you could call it that, came on day 3 when Tyler had his first public meltdown. I'd sent them to the grocery store together, armed with a detailed list and strict instructions. Danny needed to get out of the house, and Tyler needed to understand that care didn't stop when other people were watching. I followed at a distance, curious to see how my stepson would handle the stares and questions that inevitably came with taking Danny anywhere. It started in the produce section. Danny wanted to help pick out bananas, something he'd done with me hundreds of times. His method was slower than Tyler's patience could handle, especially with other shoppers navigating around them. Just grab some and let's go, Tyler muttered under his breath, shooting anxious glances at the elderly woman who was pretending not to watch them. Danny's face fell, but he wheeled back from the banana display. Sorry. You can choose. The defeat in his voice made something twist in my chest, but I forced myself to stay hidden behind the apple display. Tyler needed to see this through. They made it halfway through the store before disaster struck. Danny needed to use the restroom, something I'd explained might happen and had included in Tyler's instructions. But explaining and experiencing were two different things entirely. I watched from across the store as Tyler's face cycled through panic, embarrassment, and frustration. The family restroom was occupied, leaving only the regular men's room. A line of people waited at the customer service desk nearby, and Tyler was clearly calculating how many witnesses there would be to whatever awkwardness was about to unfold. Can't you just wait? He asked Danny, loud enough that several nearby customers turned to look. Danny's cheeks flushed red. I'm sorry. I tried to, before we left. This is so embarrassing, Tyler groaned, not bothering to lower his voice. Why didn't you tell me this would happen in public? Tyler, Danny said quietly, his voice smaller than I'd heard it in years. I can try to manage myself. No, forget it. We're just going to leave. This is stupid. Tyler grabbed the cart handles with unnecessary force. That's when Danny's careful composure finally cracked. I didn't ask for this either, he said, his words coming out sharper than usual despite his speech difficulties. You think I want to need help? You think this is fun for me? Tyler went dead still. A woman with a toddler had stopped to stare, and I saw the exact moment when Tyler realized their private family drama had become a public spectacle. People are looking, Tyler hissed. People always look, Danny replied, and for the first time since this experiment began, there was real anger in his voice. I've been dealing with people looking my whole life. At least I don't act like it's the end of the world. Tyler's face was turning blotchy red. Well, maybe if you could just be normal for 5 minutes. Tyler James Morrison. My voice cut across the store like a whip. I'd stepped out from behind my hiding spot, my protective instincts finally overriding my educational goals. Both of them turned toward me, Tyler looking like a deer in headlights and Danny's expression flooding with relief and shame in equal measure. We're going home, I said calmly, taking control of Danny's wheelchair. Now. The car ride was silent except for Danny's quiet sniffling from the back seat. Tyler stared out his window, his jaw set in stubborn lines that reminded me uncomfortably of Mark when he was refusing to admit he was wrong. Once we got home, I helped Danny get settled in his room, making sure he was okay before I dealt with Tyler. My brother was exhausted, emotionally more than physically, and I could see the familiar walls going back up around him, the protective shell he'd built as a child to handle the world's casual cruelties. Sarah, he said softly as I adjusted his pillows. Maybe Tyler's right. Maybe this is too hard. My hand stilled. What do you mean? Maybe I should look into other arrangements. For visits, I mean. I don't want to cause problems in your marriage. The matter-of-fact way he said it, like he was discussing the weather instead of removing himself from the only family he had left, made me see red. Danny, look at me. I waited until his eyes met mine. You are not the problem here. Do you understand me? You are not too much, you are not a burden, and you are not going anywhere. But I could see the doubt lingering in his expression, and I knew Tyler's words from that first day had done more damage than I'd initially realized. I found Tyler in his room an hour later, sprawled on his bed with his headphones on, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. The casual indifference in his posture after what he'd put Danny through made my blood boil all over again. I yanked his headphones off without warning. Hey. He sat up, glaring at me. What's your problem? My problem? My problem is that you just humiliated my brother in public and then acted like he was inconveniencing you by having basic human needs. Tyler rolled his eyes. I didn't know what to do, okay? And everyone was staring at us like we were some kind of freak show. They were staring because you made a scene, Tyler. Danny handles public outings just fine when he's with someone who actually cares about his dignity. Well, maybe if he didn't need so much help all the time. Stop. Right there. I stepped closer to his bed, my voice dropping to the dangerous quiet that made Mark nervous. You want to know what your real problem is? It's not that Danny needs help. It's that you're so worried about what strangers think of you that you'd rather hurt someone who's never done anything to you. Tyler's defiant expression flickered for just a moment. That's not. I wasn't trying to hurt him. Then what were you trying to do when you told him to be normal for 5 minutes? What exactly did you think that would accomplish? He looked away, his jaw working like he was chewing on words he didn't want to say. I didn't want people thinking. Thinking what? That I was like him, Tyler mumbled, so quietly I almost missed it. The honesty of it hit me like a punch to the gut. Not because it was cruel, though it was, but because it revealed something I'd been missing. Tyler wasn't just annoyed by Danny's needs. He was terrified of him. I sat down on the edge of his desk chair, suddenly exhausted. Tyler, do you think cerebral palsy is contagious? His head snapped up. What? No, that's stupid. Then explain to me why being seen with Danny would make people think you were like him. Tyler's face went red again, but this time it looked more like shame than anger. I don't know, okay? When people look at us together, I feel like they're judging me too. For what? For not being. I don't know. For not being perfect, I guess. He pulled at a thread on his comforter. Mom used to say I was her perfect boy. And Danny's just so, broken. What if something's wrong with me too and I just don't know it yet? The words hung between us, and suddenly I understood what I was really dealing with. This wasn't just teenage cruelty or inconvenience. Tyler was 16, the same age when a lot of developmental issues or mental health problems started showing up. He'd lost his mother, gained a stepfamily, and now he was confronted daily with visible proof that sometimes bodies and minds don't work the way they're supposed to. He was scared. It didn't excuse his behavior, but it explained it. Tyler, I said carefully, is that why you don't want friends over? Because you're worried they'll think something's wrong with you by association? He shrugged, but I could see I'd hit the mark. And is that why you want Danny put somewhere? Because having him around reminds you that disability exists and could happen to anyone? Maybe. His voice was small now, the bravado completely gone. Is that bad? Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. Mark poked his head in, his expression carefully neutral. How's it going in here? Tyler looked between us hopefully. Dad, can you please tell Sarah that I learned my lesson? I don't need to keep doing this caretaker thing. I get it now. But Mark surprised me. Actually, son, I think you need to keep going. Tyler's mouth fell open. What? But I just told her I understand. Understanding and actually changing are two different things, Mark said, stepping fully into the room. What you said to Danny today at the store, that's not okay. And your mother would agree with me. The mention of Linda made Tyler flinch, but Mark pressed on. Your mom worked with kids like Danny. She would be heartbroken to know you were treating someone that way. But Dad. No buts. Sarah's right. You need to learn what it really means to care for someone. Mark's voice was firmer than I'd heard it in months. And you're going to keep learning until you can do it without making Danny feel like a burden. Tyler looked between his father and me with growing panic. This is so unfair. I said I was sorry. No, I corrected, you said you understood. You never actually apologized. Not to Danny, and not to me. Fine. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry I said he was broken. I'm sorry I embarrassed him at the store. Can I be done now? The desperation in his voice told me we'd reached a breaking point, but not the right kind. Tyler was sorry he'd been caught, sorry he was facing consequences. He wasn't sorry for hurting Danny. Not yet. But maybe, with 2 more weeks left in Danny's visit, we could still get there. The next morning brought our first real crisis. I woke up to shouting from downstairs and the sound of something crashing to the floor. I ran down to find Tyler standing in the kitchen doorway, his face white as a sheet, while Danny sat on the floor beside his overturned wheelchair. Breakfast was scattered everywhere, orange juice soaking into the hardwood, scrambled eggs splattered across the cabinets. What happened? I dropped to my knees beside Danny, checking for injuries. I'm okay, Danny said quickly, though I could see his elbow was scraped. Just lost my balance during the transfer. Tyler hadn't moved from the doorway. I was trying to help him from his chair to the kitchen table, and he fell. I couldn't catch him. The raw panic in Tyler's voice made me look up sharply. He was shaking, staring at Danny like he'd almost killed him. Tyler, accidents happen. No. Tyler's voice cracked. You don't get it. What if I really hurt him? What if I broke something? What if his parents found out He stopped abruptly, his face going even paler as he realized what he'd almost said. My heart sank. In his panic, Tyler had forgotten that Danny and I shared the same parents. The same dead parents. It was a small slip, but it revealed how Tyler still saw Danny, as some temporary visitor whose real family might come take him away if he got damaged. Danny had gone very quiet, his expression carefully neutral in that way that meant his feelings were hurt but he was trying to hide it. Tyler, I said slowly, standing up and helping Danny back into his wheelchair, why don't you clean up this mess while I check Danny's scrape? But what if someone asks what happened? What if there's a bruise and people think I'm abusing him or something? Tyler's breathing was getting shallow, bordering on hyperventilation. Are you abusing him? No. But that's not how it looks, is it? A 16-year-old kid with a disabled guy who's all scraped up? They'll probably call the police or social services or... Tyler, stop. Mark appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in his pajamas. Take a breath. Everyone's okay. But Tyler wasn't listening. Dad, this is insane. I could have really hurt him. What if I had? What if something worse happens and it's my fault? I can't handle this responsibility. And there it was, the real problem. Tyler wasn't just worried about being seen with Danny or catching some imaginary disability. He was terrified of being responsible for another person's well-being. The same kid who couldn't remember to turn in his homework on time was suddenly faced with making sure someone else stayed safe, healthy, and dignified. It was overwhelming him. I want to stop, Tyler said, and for the first time since this whole thing started, his voice held genuine desperation instead of just defiance. Please. I'm going to hurt him worse if you make me keep doing this. I looked at Danny, who was studying his scraped elbow with intense focus, clearly trying to stay out of the argument about his care. Then I looked at Tyler, whose fear was so palpable I could practically taste it. Mark stepped forward. Son, maybe we should talk about modifying this arrangement. No. The word came out sharper than I intended, making both Tyler and Mark flinch. Tyler, look at me. Reluctantly, Tyler met my eyes. Do you think I never dropped Danny when I was learning? Do you think I never made mistakes that left him bruised or scared or embarrassed? Tyler blinked. I don't know. I did. Lots of them. But I kept trying because giving up wasn't an option. I glanced at Danny, whose eyes had widened slightly. We'd never talked about my early fumbles. The difference between us isn't skill level, Tyler. It's that I was willing to fail and keep learning. You want to quit at the first sign of difficulty. Tyler's jaw tightened. That's not fair. You're right, I said. It's not fair. But it's true. The rest of that day passed in tense silence. Tyler completed Danny's care routine with the mechanical precision of someone going through the motions, but there was no connection, no learning happening. He was just enduring until it was over. By evening, I could see the toll it was taking on Danny. My brother had retreated into himself, responding to Tyler's attempts at conversation with polite nods and single-word answers. The easy warmth that usually characterized Danny's interactions with everyone had disappeared, replaced by careful distance. I found Danny in his room after Tyler had finished the evening routine, staring out the window at the darkening sky. Penny for your thoughts? I said, settling into the chair beside his bed. Danny was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his words were measured and careful. Sarah, maybe Tyler would learn better with someone else. Someone who isn't so complicated. My chest tightened. You're not complicated, Danny. I am, though. He turned his wheelchair to face me, his expression serious. Today when I fell, I saw his face. He wasn't just scared he'd hurt me. He was disgusted. With himself, with the situation, with having to touch me when I needed help. The matter-of-fact way Danny said it made it worse somehow. He wasn't angry or hurt, just resigned to being seen as something unpleasant that people had to endure. That's Tyler's problem to work through, I said firmly. Not yours. But maybe forcing it isn't the answer. Danny's voice was gentle, like he was trying to protect my feelings while suggesting I'd made a mistake. Some people just aren't meant to be caregivers. And that's okay. No, it's not okay. I leaned forward, needing him to understand. Danny, this isn't about turning Tyler into a professional caregiver. It's about basic human empathy. About seeing you as a person worth caring for instead of a problem to solve. Danny smiled sadly. I know what you're trying to do. But you can't force someone to care about me. And honestly, I'm getting tired of being the lesson plan in Tyler's empathy education. The words hit me like a slap. In my determination to teach Tyler respect, had I turned my brother into a teaching tool? Had I been so focused on winning this battle that I'd forgotten Danny's dignity was supposed to be the point? Before I could respond, we heard Mark's voice from downstairs, raised in frustration. Then Tyler's voice, higher and defensive. The argument carried up through the house, though I couldn't make out specific words. Danny and I looked at each other. Should we? Danny started. No. Let them work it out. But even as I said it, Tyler's voice cracked with emotion, and something that sounded like I can't do this anymore drifted up the stairs. 20 minutes later, Mark appeared in Danny's doorway, his expression grim. We need to talk, he said to me. Tyler's having a panic attack. He's convinced he's going to seriously hurt Danny and that everyone will blame him. He's talking about going to stay with his grandmother for the rest of the summer. I felt a cold spike of anger. So he's running away? Sarah, be reasonable. The kid is 16 and scared out of his mind. Maybe we pushed this too far. Or maybe we're finally getting somewhere, I shot back. Tyler's scared because for the first time in his life, someone else's well-being depends on him. That's called growing up, Mark. And what if Danny gets hurt while Tyler's learning to grow up? Mark's voice was sharp now. What if next time Tyler drops him, it's not just a scraped elbow? Danny cleared his throat softly. Maybe I should go back to my apartment early. Give everyone some space to cool off. Absolutely not. The words exploded out of me. Danny, you are not leaving because Tyler can't handle basic decency. Mark's expression hardened. This isn't about decency anymore, Sarah. This is about you being so stubborn that you're willing to risk Danny's safety to prove a point. The accusation hung in the air between us, and I saw Danny's eyes widen as he realized this wasn't just about Tyler anymore. Mark and I were heading toward a fight that could split our marriage apart, and Danny was caught in the middle. Get out, I said quietly to Mark. We'll finish this conversation later. After Mark left, Danny and I sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, he wheeled closer to where I was sitting. Sarah, what happens if you win this fight but lose your marriage? The question I'd been avoiding for days finally hung in the open air between us, waiting for an answer I wasn't sure I had. I stared at Danny's question, feeling the weight of it settle in my chest like a stone. What happens if I win this fight but lose my marriage? The truth was, I'd been so focused on protecting Danny and teaching Tyler that I hadn't fully considered the collateral damage. I don't know, I admitted quietly. But I know what happens if I don't fight. Tyler learns that he can say horrible things about people I love and face no real consequences. And you learn that I'll throw you under the bus to keep peace in my marriage. Danny nodded slowly, but I could see the worry in his eyes. What if there was a middle ground? Something that doesn't require Mark to choose between you and his son? Before I could answer, Tyler appeared in the doorway. His face was blotchy from crying, and his hands were shaking slightly. Behind him, Mark hovered with the protective stance of a father watching his child fall apart. I want to say something, Tyler said, his voice hoarse. And I don't want anyone interrupting me until I'm done. I opened my mouth to respond, but Danny shot me a warning look. Okay, I said carefully. We're listening. Tyler stepped into the room, wrapping his arms around himself like he was cold. I've been thinking about what you said. About my mom. About how she would feel about the way I've been acting. Mark shifted uncomfortably behind him, but stayed quiet. The thing is, Tyler continued, Mom died when I was 13. And before she got sick, she was the one who took care of everything. She helped me with homework, made my lunches, reminded me about appointments. I never had to take care of anyone else because she was always taking care of me. His voice was getting stronger, more steady. Then she got sick, and suddenly she needed help with things. Simple things. And I couldn't do it. I was too scared, too grossed out, too selfish, I guess. Dad hired nurses and sent me to stay with Grandma most of the time because I couldn't handle seeing Mom like that. The room had gone completely silent. Even Mark looked surprised by this revelation. She died while I was at Grandma's house, Tyler said, and his voice cracked again. I was supposed to come home that weekend, but I told Dad I had this stupid baseball tournament that I couldn't miss. It wasn't even important. I couldn't face seeing her worse than she'd been the last time. Danny made a soft sound of sympathy, and Tyler's eyes snapped to him. So when I see you needing help with basic things, it reminds me that I'm the kind of person who abandons people when they need me most. And that makes me angry. Not at you, he said quickly, but at myself. And I've been taking that anger out on you because it's easier than admitting what a coward I am. The confession hung in the air, raw and painful. I felt my anger toward Tyler shifting, not disappearing but changing shape. He was still a 16-year-old who'd said cruel things to my brother. But he was also a kid carrying guilt that was way too heavy for his shoulders. Tyler, Danny said gently, you were 13. Watching a parent die is traumatic for adults, let alone kids. But you're not much older than me, and Sarah expects you to handle everything perfectly, Tyler shot back. She's never scared of hurting you or doing something wrong. She just does what needs to be done. I was about to correct him when I realized he was right about something important. I did make it look easy. I'd been caring for Danny for so long that I'd forgotten how terrifying it was in the beginning. How many nights I'd lain awake worrying about making mistakes that could hurt him. Tyler, I said slowly, what if I told you that last month, I accidentally gave Danny too much of his muscle relaxant and had to call poison control? Tyler's eyes widened. What? Or that 2 weeks ago, I rushed a transfer and he ended up with a bruised rib that took days to heal? Danny looked at me in surprise. I'd been more careful about hiding my recent mistakes from him than I'd realized. Mark stepped forward. Sarah, what are you saying? I'm saying that maybe Tyler's right about one thing. I have been expecting perfection from him when I don't even achieve it myself. I looked directly at Tyler. But the difference is, I don't let my mistakes become excuses to treat Danny badly. I apologize, I learn, and I do better next time. Tyler was quiet for a long moment, processing this. So, you're not going to make me quit? I'm going to give you a choice, I said, the words surprising me as they came out. You can continue learning Danny's care routine with the understanding that mistakes are part of learning. Or you can spend the rest of his visit doing community service at the assisted living facility downtown, working with other people who need daily care. That's not really a choice, Tyler protested. You're right. It's not. Because doing nothing isn't an option anymore. Tyler looked at his father, then at Danny, then back at me. And if I choose to keep working with Danny, you won't expect me to be perfect? I'll expect you to try, to be respectful, and to put Danny's dignity before your own comfort. But no, I won't expect perfection. For the first time in days, something that might have been hope flickered across Tyler's face. The next morning, Tyler showed up to Danny's room with a notebook and pen, looking determined but nervous. I want to write down the steps, he said without preamble. So I don't forget important stuff. It was such a small gesture, but it felt like progress. For the first time, Tyler was approaching Danny's care as something to master rather than endure. The improvement lasted exactly 3 hours. I was in my office when I heard Tyler's voice from the living room, tight with frustration. Danny, I already told you, we'll get lunch after I finish this level. Just wait 5 more minutes. Through my window, I could see Danny in his wheelchair by the couch, one hand pressed to his stomach. Even from a distance, I recognized the signs. He needed the bathroom, and he needed it now. Tyler, Danny said, his voice strained, I really can't wait. I'm sorry, but... God, this is so annoying. You literally just went an hour ago. I was out of my chair before I consciously decided to move, but I forced myself to stop in the hallway. This was exactly the kind of situation Tyler needed to learn to handle without me swooping in to rescue him. Tyler, please. There was genuine distress in Danny's voice now. I know it's inconvenient, but I can feel that I'm going to have an accident if... Fine. Whatever. But after this, can you just try to plan better? It's like you do this stuff on purpose when I'm busy. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Tyler thought Danny was timing his bodily functions to be deliberately difficult. The sheer ignorance of it made my teeth clench. I heard the sounds of Tyler roughly helping Danny transfer to his wheelchair, followed by Danny's sharp intake of breath, a sound that meant Tyler had grabbed him wrong, probably pressing on a pressure point or pulling too hard on his arm. Careful, Danny said quietly. I'm being careful. Maybe if you weren't so tense all the time, this would be easier. That's when I heard it, the sound that made my blood run cold. A soft splash, followed by Tyler's disgusted groan. Are you kidding me right now? You couldn't hold it for 30 seconds? The silence that followed was deafening. I knew Danny well enough to picture his face, the mortification, the shame, the way he'd retreat into himself when his body betrayed him in front of someone who already saw him as a burden. Tyler, Danny's voice was barely a whisper, I'm sorry. I really tried. This is disgusting. I can't. I'm not cleaning this up. I'm getting Sarah. Please don't. The desperation in Danny's voice stopped me from storming into the room. I can clean myself up if you just help me get to the bathroom. You don't have to tell her. Like she won't notice? The whole hallway smells now. I closed my eyes, fighting every protective instinct screaming at me to intervene. This was humiliating for Danny, but if I stepped in now, Tyler would never learn that these accidents weren't personal failures or deliberate inconveniences. They were medical realities that required patience and dignity. Tyler, Danny tried again, accidents happen sometimes. It's not anyone's fault. It's definitely someone's fault. If you just told me sooner instead of waiting until the last second. I told you I needed to go 20 minutes ago. The quiet certainty in Danny's voice seemed to penetrate Tyler's defensiveness. I heard footsteps, then Tyler's voice, slightly subdued. You did? When you said to wait 5 minutes. And then again when you said you just needed to finish the level. And then when you told me to plan better. Each statement landed like a small bomb. Tyler had been so focused on his video game that he dismissed Danny's increasingly urgent requests, then blamed Danny for the inevitable result. Oh. Tyler's voice was very small. I didn't realize you were being serious. I don't lie about needing the bathroom, Tyler. I can't afford to. The weight of that statement hung between them. Danny couldn't afford to be casual about his bodily functions the way Tyler could. Every delay, every just 5 more minutes, carried real consequences. I'll help you get cleaned up, Tyler said finally. And I won't tell Sarah it was an accident. I'll tell her it was my fault for not listening. Through the crack in the door, I watched Tyler gently guide Danny's wheelchair toward the bathroom, his movements careful in a way they hadn't been before. For the first time, he seemed to understand that Danny's needs weren't negotiable inconveniences, they were urgent realities that required immediate attention. But as I watched them disappear into the bathroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were still teetering on the edge of something that could go very wrong. An hour later, Tyler emerged from the bathroom looking pale and shaken. Danny had been settled in his room with fresh clothes and reassurances, but I could see the emotional toll the incident had taken on both of them. I found Tyler sitting on the kitchen floor, his back against the cabinets, staring blankly at the tile. When he heard my footsteps, he looked up with red-rimmed eyes. I messed up, he said simply. Really bad this time. I poured 2 glasses of water and sat down on the floor across from him. Tell me what happened. Danny told me 3 times he needed the bathroom, and I kept telling him to wait because I was playing this stupid game. Tyler's voice was flat, emotionless. He had an accident because I wasn't listening. Because I thought my game was more important than his basic needs. The stark honesty surprised me. No excuses, no deflection, just acknowledgement of cause and effect. How do you think Danny felt? I asked. Tyler flinched. Humiliated. Ashamed. Probably like I think he's disgusting. He pulled his knees up to his chest. The thing is, for just a second, I did think it was disgusting. And I hate that about myself. Why do you think you had that reaction? Because I'm selfish? Because I've never had to think about anyone but myself? Tyler's voice was getting quieter. Or maybe because watching someone lose control of their body reminds me that it could happen to anyone. Even me. There it was again, that underlying fear that had been driving Tyler's behavior from the beginning. The terror that disability was contagious, that being around Danny somehow made him vulnerable to the same struggles. Tyler, do you know how many times I've cleaned up accidents? How many times I've helped Danny through moments just like this one? He shook his head. Hundreds. Maybe thousands. And every single time, my first thought isn't about how inconvenient it is for me. It's about making sure Danny doesn't feel broken or ashamed for having a body that works differently. Tyler was quiet for a long moment. How do you do that? How do you not get frustrated or grossed out? I do get frustrated sometimes. The difference is that I don't let Danny see it, and I don't blame him for things he can't control. I set my water glass down. Tyler, can you control when you need to use the bathroom? Most of the time, yeah. Danny can't. His muscle control is different. When he tells you he needs to go, it's not a request, it's a warning that his body is about to do what it needs to do whether we're ready or not. The explanation seemed to click something into place for Tyler. So when I made him wait, you were essentially asking him to perform an impossible task. Like asking someone to hold their breath for 20 minutes. Tyler buried his face in his hands. God, I'm an idiot. No wonder he looked so panicked. Before I could respond, Mark appeared in the kitchen doorway. His expression was carefully neutral, but I could see the concern in the set of his shoulders. How's everyone doing? He asked. Tyler's learning, I said simply. Mark looked between us, clearly wanting to ask more questions but not sure if he should interrupt. Maybe we could order pizza for dinner? Give everyone a break from cooking? It was a peace offering, a small gesture toward normalcy. But as I watched Tyler nod gratefully at his father's suggestion, I realized we weren't anywhere near normal yet. Sure, I said. But Tyler, you're still responsible for helping Danny with dinner. Accident or no accident, that doesn't change. Tyler's face went pale again, but he nodded. Okay. What if I mess up again? What if I hurt him worse next time? The fear in his voice was real, and for the first time since this all began, I felt a flicker of doubt about what I was putting both of them through. That night, I lay in bed listening to Mark's careful breathing beside me, both of us pretending to sleep while our marriage hung in the balance. The day's events replayed in my mind, Tyler's breakdown, Danny's humiliation, the slow realization that maybe forcing empathy wasn't as straightforward as I believed. At 3 a.m., a crash from downstairs jolted me awake. I found Tyler in the kitchen, standing amid the wreckage of what looked like an entire cabinet's worth of dishes. His face was streaked with tears, and his hands were bleeding from small cuts where he tried to clean up broken ceramic. Tyler, what happened? I was trying to get Danny some water. He said his mouth was dry from his medication, and I thought if I could just do something right for once. His voice broke. But I knocked over the dish rack and everything fell, and now there's glass everywhere and Danny's going to step on it or cut himself and it'll be my fault again. The panic in his voice was escalating, and I could see him spiraling into the same place he'd been earlier, convinced that any mistake he made could catastrophically hurt Danny. Tyler, breathe. Danny's asleep upstairs. He's fine. But what if he needs something else? What if he needs the bathroom again and I don't hear him calling? What if he tries to get there himself because he doesn't want to bother me and he falls? Tyler was talking faster now, his anxiety feeding on itself. I grabbed his shoulders gently. Tyler, stop. You're having a panic attack. I can't do this anymore, he whispered. I thought I could learn, but every time I try to help him, something goes wrong. I'm going to seriously hurt him, and then you'll never forgive me and Dad will hate me and Danny will be scared of me forever. Mark appeared in the doorway, taking in the destruction with wide eyes. What's going on? Your son is having a breakdown because he's convinced he's going to kill my brother, I said, more harshly than I'd intended. Sarah, Mark warned. No, she's right, Tyler said, his voice hollow. That's exactly what I think. Every transfer, every meal, every bathroom break, I'm terrified I'm going to drop him or choke him or hurt him so bad that he ends up in the hospital. Mark moved carefully around the broken dishes to reach Tyler. Son, you've been doing fine. Sarah said you've been learning. Learning how to hurt him better? Tyler laughed bitterly. Dad, I made him have an accident today because I was too selfish to pause a video game. I grabbed his arm so hard yesterday that he had bruises. I almost scalded him in the shower on day 2. I'm not learning, I'm just finding new ways to mess up. The raw self-hatred in Tyler's voice stopped me cold. In my determination to teach him empathy, had I actually convinced him he was dangerous? Had I turned necessary learning experiences into evidence of his fundamental inadequacy? Tyler, I said carefully, those weren't character flaws. Those were learning mistakes. But what if I make a learning mistake that puts him in the ER? What if the next time I screw up, it's not just embarrassing, it's permanent? Before I could answer, we heard a sound from upstairs, Danny calling my name, his voice thick with sleep and confusion. Tyler went white. See? He needs something and I didn't hear him. He could have been calling for an hour while I was down here having a meltdown. The guilt and terror on his face told me we'd reached a crisis point that I wasn't sure any of us were equipped to handle. I rushed upstairs to find Danny sitting up in bed, looking disoriented and worried. Sarah? I heard crashing downstairs. Is everyone okay? Everything's fine, I said quickly, helping him get settled. Tyler just had a small accident in the kitchen. Go back to sleep. But Danny's eyes were too alert, too knowing. He's struggling, isn't he? More than you expected. I couldn't lie to him. Yes. Maybe we should. No. The word came out harder than I intended. Danny, we're not stopping now. Not when we're this close to a breakthrough. A breakdown isn't a breakthrough, Sarah. His quiet observation hit me like cold water. Danny had been watching this unfold too, seeing Tyler's increasing distress, my stubborn refusal to adjust course. And unlike me, he wasn't invested in winning this battle, he was just tired of being caught in the crossfire. When I got back downstairs, Mark had Tyler sitting at the kitchen table while he swept up the broken dishes. The cuts on Tyler's hands had been bandaged, but his face still held that hollow, panicked expression. We need to talk, Mark said without looking up from his sweeping. All of us. Tomorrow. Tyler's head snapped up. Dad, you can't make her stop now. She'll think I'm weak and... This isn't about strength, son. This is about mental health. Yours and Danny's. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Mark was right, and I knew it. Tyler was developing genuine anxiety around Danny's care, and my brother was becoming a reluctant participant in someone else's psychological breakdown. One more week, I said, surprising myself. Give me one more week to help him work through this. Mark's room stilled. Sarah, look at him. He's terrified of touching Danny. How is that helping anyone? Because fear isn't permanent. But the lessons he learns from pushing through it could be. Tyler looked between us desperately. What if I promise to do better? What if I read more about cerebral palsy, take notes, practice the transfers until... Tyler, stop. I sat down across from him. The studying isn't the problem. The fear is. Then how do I fix it? The question was so earnest, so desperate, that I felt something shift inside me. Tyler wasn't trying to get out of consequences anymore, he was genuinely asking how to become the person he thought he should be. You start by accepting that caring for someone vulnerable is scary. Even for me. I looked at Mark, then back at Tyler. But you don't let the fear become an excuse to stop trying. Mark set down the broom and pulled out his phone. I'm calling Dr. Peterson. Tyler needs someone to talk to about his anxiety around this. A therapist? Tyler's voice cracked. Dad, I don't need. You're having panic attacks about caring for another human being. That's not normal teenage stress, son. The word normal seemed to echo in the quiet kitchen. Nothing about this situation was normal. Not Tyler's cruel comments, not my malicious compliance, not Danny's patient endurance of both our attempts to use him as a teaching tool. What if the therapist says I'm not capable of doing this? Tyler asked quietly. Then we'll find another approach, Mark said. But giving up isn't an option anymore. Your stepmother is right about that much. Tyler looked at me with something that might have been hope. You'd still want me to try? Even if a professional says I'm messing this up? Tyler, you've been messing it up from day one. That's never been the question. I leaned forward. The question is whether you're willing to keep messing up until you get it right. For the first time in days, Tyler almost smiled. That's a really weird pep talk. It's a really weird situation. But as I watched Mark schedule an emergency therapy session for the next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that bringing in outside help meant admitting my methods weren't working. And if they weren't working, what did that say about everything I'd put Danny through? The real test would come tomorrow, when Tyler had to choose between backing down or facing his fears head-on. The therapist appointment was scheduled for 10 a.m., which meant Tyler had to handle Danny's morning routine first. I watched from the hallway as he stood outside Danny's door for a full 5 minutes, his hand hovering over the doorknob like it might burn him. When he finally knocked, his voice was barely audible. Danny? It's time to get up. Come in, Tyler. I followed them through the routine, noting how Tyler's hands shook during every transfer. He moved like he was defusing a bomb, every action careful to the point of paralysis. When Danny winced slightly during the wheelchair transfer, just a normal adjustment, Tyler immediately pulled back. Did I hurt you? I'm sorry, I can try a different way. Tyler, you're fine. I just shifted wrong. But Tyler was already spiraling. Maybe I should get Sarah. She knows how to do this without. Tyler. Danny's voice was firm. Look at me. Tyler reluctantly met Danny's eyes, and I saw something pass between them that made my chest tight. I trust you, Danny said simply. You haven't seriously hurt me yet, and you won't today. But what if? What if you drop me and I break my neck? What if you accidentally poison me with the wrong medication? What if I choke on breakfast and die? Danny's tone was matter of fact. Tyler, I live with what if every day. If I let fear control everything, I'd never leave my bed. Tyler stared at him. Aren't you scared though? That I'll mess up? Sometimes. But I'm more scared of living in a world where people are too afraid to help me because they might not be perfect at it. The conversation continued, but I stepped away, realizing this wasn't meant for me to witness. For the first time since this began, Tyler and Danny were actually talking to each other instead of around each other. An hour later, we sat in Dr. Peterson's office. Tyler fidgeted in his chair while the therapist reviewed the notes Mark had given him over the phone. Tyler, your father explained the situation. How are you feeling about caring for Danny? Terrified, Tyler said immediately. Every second. I keep thinking I'm going to hurt him and everyone will blame me. Has anyone actually blamed you when accidents happened? Tyler glanced at me. Not exactly. But Sarah expects me to get better, and I don't think I am. Dr. Peterson turned to me. Sarah, what does getting better look like to you? The question caught me off guard. I want him to stop seeing Danny as a burden. To understand that caring for people is a responsibility, not an inconvenience. And Tyler, what do you think Sarah wants from you? Perfection. No mistakes, no complaints, no fear. Tyler's voice was flat. She wants me to be like her, someone who can handle anything without freaking out. Dr. Peterson nodded slowly. It sounds like you're both focused on very different goals. Sarah, you want empathy and respect. Tyler, you think you need to eliminate all anxiety and errors. Those aren't the same thing. He turned back to Tyler. What if I told you that fear and competence can coexist? That you can be scared of hurting Danny while still being capable of caring for him safely? Tyler blinked. Is that a real thing? Tyler, every parent is terrified of hurting their child when they're learning to care for them. Every nurse has anxiety when they start working with new patients. Fear means you understand the stakes, it doesn't mean you're unfit for the responsibility. I felt something uncomfortable twist in my stomach. But he can't let fear paralyze him. No, Dr. Peterson agreed, but he also can't be expected to eliminate it entirely. Tyler, your stepmother is right that you need to push through discomfort. But she may be expecting you to process trauma and develop skills at an unrealistic pace. The word trauma hung in the air. Trauma? I repeated. Tyler lost his mother to illness at 13. He's told you he feels guilty about not being able to care for her. Now he's being asked to provide intimate care to someone vulnerable, with high stakes for failure. That's going to trigger some psychological responses that pure willpower can't override. Tyler was staring at his hands. So I'm not just weak? You're not weak at all. But you are asking your brain to do something that conflicts with some very deep fears. Mark leaned forward. So what do we do? Sarah's brother leaves in a week. Dr. Peterson looked at me directly. Sarah, what's more important, Tyler learning these specific caregiving skills, or Tyler developing genuine empathy and respect for Danny as a person? The question felt like a trap, but I answered honestly. The empathy and respect. Then you might need to separate those goals from the hands-on care. Tyler can learn to value Danny without becoming his primary caregiver. I felt my jaw tighten. That feels like letting him off the hook. Or it feels like acknowledging that forced intimacy isn't the only path to understanding. Tyler suddenly spoke up. What if I want to keep trying? We all turned to stare at him. I mean, what if the problem isn't that I can't do this, but that I'm trying to do it without being scared? Tyler's voice was getting stronger. Danny said something this morning about living with what if every day. Maybe I need to learn how to be afraid and still show up. Dr. Peterson smiled. Now that sounds like actual growth. But as we left the office, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change in ways I hadn't planned for. The final test came that evening when Danny had a seizure. It started during dinner. Danny's fork clattered to his plate and his body went rigid. I was halfway out of my chair when I realized Tyler was already moving, catching Danny's shoulders as he slumped forward. Should I call 911? Tyler asked, his voice tight but controlled. Not yet. Help me get him to the floor. I guided Tyler through positioning Danny safely, watching as my stepson followed every instruction without hesitation despite his obvious fear. The seizure lasted 90 seconds, not unusual for Danny, but terrifying if you'd never seen one. When it ended, Danny was disoriented and exhausted. Tyler sat beside him on the floor, one hand gently on Danny's shoulder. Hey, Tyler said softly. You're okay. Sarah's here, I'm here. Just breathe. I stared at them both, realizing something had fundamentally shifted. Tyler wasn't performing caregiving anymore, he was just caring. That was scary, Tyler admitted to Danny as we helped him back to his wheelchair. For me too, Danny replied with a tired smile. Thanks for not panicking. Oh, I was definitely panicking. I just didn't let it stop me. Later that night, Tyler found me on the back porch. I want to keep helping Danny tomorrow. Not because you're making me, but because I think I actually like taking care of him. Even though it scares you? Especially because it scares me. It means he matters enough to be worth the fear. I felt tears prick my eyes. Tyler, I owe you an apology. I was so focused on forcing you to care that I forgot to show you why Danny was worth caring about. Tyler sat down beside me. I was horrible to him. To you. I don't know if sorry is enough. Sorry is a start. Showing up despite being scared is what makes it real. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of laughter from downstairs. I found Tyler and Danny at the kitchen table, Tyler patiently helping Danny with breakfast while my brother told some ridiculous story that had them both giggling. What's so funny? I asked. Tyler was worried he'd mess up making my eggs, Danny grinned, so he made 12 different attempts. The kitchen looks like explosion happened. I wanted them perfect, Tyler said sheepishly. Turns out Danny likes them a little burned anyway. I like that you cared enough to try 12 times, Danny corrected. Mark appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with wonder. So, we're good here? Tyler looked at Danny, then at me. Actually, I was thinking, maybe Danny could visit more often? I mean, if he wants to. I'm getting pretty good at this caretaker thing. Danny's face lit up. I'd like that. Even though I'll probably never stop being nervous about dropping you? Tyler, I'm nervous about being dropped. That's what makes us a good team. 6 months later, Tyler spent his spring break at Danny's apartment, learning to navigate the city with someone in a wheelchair. He came back full of stories and completely comfortable with Danny's needs. You know what's funny? Tyler told me. Other people stare at us sometimes, and I used to hate that. But now I just think they're missing out on knowing someone as cool as Danny. The kid who once called my brother a burden had learned something I couldn't have forced, that caring for someone isn't about perfect technique or eliminating fear. It's about showing up anyway, because some people are worth the effort. And sometimes, malicious compliance teaches exactly the lesson you hoped it would, just not the way you expected.